Hello, everyone, and welcome to this week's Product School webinar. Thanks for joining us today. Just in case you didn't know, Product School teaches product management, product leadership, coding, data analytics, UX design, and digital marketing courses online and at our 16 campuses worldwide. On top of that, every week we offer some amazing local product management events and host online webinars, live streams, and Ask Me Anything sessions. Head over to productschool.com after this webinar to check them out. Today, we have an awesome guest presenting. I'd like to introduce you to Jeff Lash. Jeff is a recognized thought leader in product management with over a decade of experience in the development of web-based and software-as-a-service products. His product management career includes both new product introductions and major turnarounds of existing product lines, as well as introduction of the product management role into organizations. He has significant expertise in customer understanding, new product innovation, agile product management, user experience design, and product development processes. Feel free to leave any questions for Jeff in the comments, and we'll be sure to address them at the end. Without further ado, let's welcome Jeff. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, absolutely. It's nice to be here, and thanks for everyone who's joining. I'm excited to be here today to talk about competitive analysis for product management. There's a lot of different topics that product managers need to be responsible for, and I find especially for folks who are new to product management, competitive analysis oftentimes is one of the trickiest ones to figure out exactly what product managers should do. So today I'm going to share with you some recommendations of some kind of a simple approach that I think can be really helpful if you are new to competitive analysis, or even if you're an experienced product manager and just trying to figure out how to do it better. What I'm sharing with you today comes from my own personal experience, as well as the work that we do at SiriusDecisions, where I spend most of my day every day working with B2B product managers, product management teams, and product leaders, trying to help them implement best practices and improve performance. So I'm going to share with you a bit of the research that we've been doing in terms of competitive analysis and how to improve around that. Again, I'll make sure I leave some time at the end for questions. So certainly if you have any questions or comments, please add them in. So competitive analysis is a big topic, certainly more than we can cover in depth in 30 minutes today. But I want to at least start with kind of the framing of when we think about competitive analysis at SiriusDecisions and when we guide our clients, the three basic elements, and I say elements, but these are really broad areas. So first, we need to gather competitive information, right? We need to go out and do research and make sure we're getting the right information, quantitative, qualitative data. I should say actually there's a step zero before this, which is identify who your competitors are. But assuming you know who your existing and potential future competitors are, the first step is really to gather good information. And if you don't gather good information, you can't really do the next steps. I find that there are some product managers, again, that struggle with this, that can't even get through this first step, or there are teams that do a good job gathering information, but then they stop there and they don't really do anything with it. So the second step is that we need to assess information, right? We need to examine and evaluate this information. And this should be more than just an exercise of saying, hey, we read a couple press releases and I saw a couple brochures and all right, we're done. So, there's different approaches. We have a more formal competitive analysis model we've developed that involves some ranking and scoring and things like that. But essentially, you want to make sure that you're taking an objective approach to assess the information. And then ultimately, you need to act on it. And I don't want to kind of de-emphasize the fact, even though this is last, really that's what this is all about. So if you do a good job gathering information and you do a good job assessing the information, but you never actually act on it, then you've just quite frankly wasted a bunch of time. And this is one of these areas that I see product managers a lot of times spending a lot of time doing information gathering and assessing and discussing, but then never actually do anything with it. So at the end of the day, the purpose of competitive analysis is to actually make decisions, make business decisions based on what we've learned. So I want you to keep that in mind and not get hung up in the details, of, well, which sources and is this source more valid than this source and things like that. And we can debate those all day, but ultimately we want to act on this information. And if we're not acting on it either from a product roadmap perspective or changing requirements or changing positioning or enabling our sales team, then it's really a lot of hard work that's wasted. So one of the things that we talked about we'd cover in this session today is what are some of the mistakes we see product managers making, and not to be too negative about it, but there are some common mistakes. And again, we won't be able to address all of these today, but I think they're important at least to keep in mind to make sure, if nothing else, that's kind of a checklist to make sure that you're not falling into these traps. So first is when you're gathering information, a couple of mistakes I see people making. First is they start with the easy to access sources. So, I'm going to go to my competitor's websites, or I'm just going to do a Google search and look at the first page and all right, I'm done. Well, the reality is not, there's lots of information sources. There's lots of sources online beyond just the first page of search results. And there's also offline sources. As great as the internet is to get competitive information, some of the most useful information requires getting out of the office, getting out from behind your computer, going to events, talking to people, things like that. So making sure that you're looking at the wide breadth of sources that are available. I already mentioned that kind of this, relying exclusively on these online and digital sources. I think as more and more information becomes available and there's more and more ways to do that, people get kind of lazy, quite frankly. And, I think about to my own career and experience, some of the most useful competitive information I've gotten is stuff that I would not have gotten had I not done customer interviews or reached out to people who had understanding of the industry or gone to events or trade shows or conferences or things like that. And the third is, is the mistake of taking information at face value. So you need to think about where does this information come from, and is there any sort of bias, or is there things that are missing, or can we actually rely on this, right? So I'll give you an example. This is maybe dating myself a bit, but this was years ago. I worked on a product where there was a very popular email discussion list that people, the personas we were targeting, spent a lot of time, and this was a pretty popular list. And so it was a great way to monitor what was going on, what were the problems and questions they were having. So all these people around the world were on this email discussion list. Well, there were some times where people would post information about our products there or our competitors there. And some people, quite frankly, really liked our competitors. Some people disliked the competitors. So we needed to we got to the point where we knew, if this person's posting something, they don't like this competitor. So maybe we shouldn't actually believe them because maybe they're just trying to make them look bad. Or another situation where, this person really loves the competitor, or maybe they used to work for the competitor, so therefore they're going to say nice things about them. So, this is something where this is the art and science, right? This is the art part of it. So making sure you kind of take things with a grain of salt and just understand what information is going to be valid and what's not. When we get into the assess step, a couple of mistakes we see people make. First is just skipping it entirely, right? So I've seen a lot of people where, they read a press release or they get one email from a salesperson saying that their competitor is doing something, and they spring into action and just say, all right, hey, this competitor added this feature, we're gonna add this feature, without ever actually analyzing, should we be adding this feature, or why did they add this feature and what were they trying to do? So making sure that we actually do this analysis, we need to make sure that we evaluate the information, right? So again, going back to the taking information at face value, right? If we have 5 data points saying the competitor is doing one thing and 2 data points saying competitor is doing something else, well, those 2 data points actually might be better because they're from a valid source, or maybe the 5 data points is better because just more evidence. So it's not that every bit of information is going to be equal, right? This is where we need to use some kind of critical thinking skills to evaluate the information. And the third one, which I'll come back to in a minute, is in this assessment phase, one of the biggest mistakes I see product managers, especially new product managers, making is focusing only on what I call product feature comparisons, where it's, our product has this feature and their product doesn't. And I'll show you an example of that and talk about how to overcome that. But on this third step, another couple common mistakes. The first big one I see is just this analysis paralysis, where especially people who are really good at competitive analysis can gather a lot of information, but then they never actually make decisions on it. So at some point, again, the whole point is we want to make some changes. We want to impact, things that we're adding to the product, or how it's designed, or things on our roadmap. So we need to actually set a deadline and say, look, we're going to make decisions, or maybe we're going to decide that we're not going to do anything, even though this competitor is doing something. We're not going to do anything because of that. But that should be a conscious decision rather than just we never got around to it. And I think the other thing to keep in mind is that, you are a product manager, you are doing competitive analysis, often focused on the product, but information you learn through competitive analysis should not be exclusively limited to what features should we add or change or take away, right? You're going to learn things that can help market better. You can learn things that can help position the product better. You're going to learn things that can help your salespeople function better. So it may not be that you're actually doing those things, but making sure that you're keeping your eyes open to that sort of information, because oftentimes that's some of the most beneficial things we can learn about competitive analysis. So I want to focus the rest of the time on this one here. Again, we could probably spend an hour on, or even more, on each one of these bullet points, but I really want to focus on this one today because it's a big mistake I see a lot of people making, and we've got an approach that I want to share that I think can be really useful, and it's something you can start literally this afternoon, starting to go and implement. So I put this this up on Twitter a couple months ago, and it has been by far one of my most popular tweets ever. I think it just hit a nerve with people. Basically, it came from seeing a lot of competitive analysis grids over the years and just seeing all the problems with them. So by competitive analysis comparison grid, what I mean is we've all seen that chart, right? It's on a flyer, it's on a website, it's in some marketing materials, and it basically shows your product versus, or the company's product versus other products. And the frustration I have with them is they are, in many cases, designed to overlook key flaws that the product, that the company's product has, and downplay things that the other products do well, right? So this is certainly very much tongue in cheek, but in reality, not actually that far off the truth, right? So typically you'll see this, right? We say, hey, what's the standard sort of stuff you'd expect that our product has it and the competitors have it too? Okay, great. Well, then, hey, we've got this cool new feature. But the reality is this cool new feature might be really interesting when someone demos or trials the product, but then are people actually going to use it? And so we say, oh, we've got this great feature, but the reality is it doesn't matter whether you have that feature because it's not really that useful. I see a lot of product comparison grids that talk about the technology, or see someone's like, oh, it's built using an agile process, or it's on this sort of using this computer programming language. It's like, buyers don't care about that. Users don't care about that. So yes, you might think it's interesting. Your team might think it's interesting, but no one really cares. I see a lot of comparisons where they say, oh, we have 10,000 of X, or we allow you to store this amount of data. And it's like, the reality is no one wants to store that much data. So if a customer needs 100 widgets or units of something and you have 10,000, it doesn't really matter because they don't place any additional value beyond the 100. So whether you have 100 or 1,000 or 10,000, it's kind of wasted resources because they don't place any value with that extra capability that you're providing. Then there's things like, and this is, I get a bit of joke, right? It has our logo on it, awesome product manager, blah, blah, blah. But, these sort of things where they're things that the company the product manager creating the comparison really cares about, but no one else does. And then, oh, by the way, at the bottom, the things that customers really care about, we might actually be worse than the competition on. And this is the thing that really gets me, because I've been in this situation, I've seen the situation where you can put a grid like this together where there are 15 rows and you've got 13 checkboxes and the competitors have 13 X's, but the two things that they have checkboxes off, and the two things you have X's on, are the things that customers actually really care about. So this is really the whole basis behind what I'm going to share with you. Is it's not just about the numbers and it's not just about the features. We really need to understand what do our customers need, and then look at competition through that lens. So we're still doing competitive analysis, but it's through the lens of understanding our customers, understanding our buyers and users and what they need. So we call this competitive product analysis. And I use that term to distinguish between this from competitive analysis, which looks at, how much money does they have, how fast are they growing, what's their go-to-market strategy, do they have a great sales and distribution, what's their branding, right? There's all sorts of things that go into competitive analysis. Here we're going to focus just on competitive product analysis. And really this looks at how well does the organization's products or product meet customer needs, and how do we compare how our product meets customer needs to a competitor's. And this should be mainly for a somewhat direct competitor. So this is a product to product comparison, not a company name to company name comparison in most cases. And now maybe for smaller companies, the company name is the product, that's okay. But in many cases, at least I work with a lot of clients where they've got multiple different products. So we're looking at the most direct competitor from a product perspective. And the basic thing we want to do here is look at whether our products are below, at parity, or above parity on key capabilities. And I use the word capabilities very specifically. Capabilities are different than features, right? So capability might be the ability to get data out of the system. Well, features are PDF exporting, XML exporting, APIs, et cetera, right? Features are not important in of themselves only if they relate to capability. So we want to focus at that capability level. And I'll show you an example in a minute, because if we don't support the capability, or we don't support the key elements of the capability, the specific features really don't matter. Now, how this is different than that kind of humorous example I showed you before, or how I see a lot of people doing it, is number one, as I mentioned, a competitive analysis is going to be broader in scope. So it's going to look at elements of the customer experience. It's going to look at brand equity. It's going to look at a lot of other things. And those are really important. And those are things, and many of them are things that product managers should be doing. But for the purposes of today, we'll kind of keep it nicely contained and just talk about the product comparison. And then the second thing is that this is an internal facing analysis. So those examples that you've seen where a company has on their website how they compare to the competitors, the things that are in the marketing materials, all that sort of stuff, those are customer facing. Those are, for sales and marketing purposes, and they are going to be slanted and weighted, right? If there's something that our competitor does a lot better than us, we probably don't want to bring that up when we're talking to a prospect. We're not going to lie and say that we do it. We're not going to bring it up if we don't want to highlight it. This internal facing competitive product analysis should be complete and objective. We want to look at all of the things that our customers really care about, and we want to look at how well we actually do. We don't want to bend the truth. We don't want to kind of say, oh yeah, well, we think ours is better, right? We want to make this objective, because if we don't do it objectively, then it's not going to be useful. Now, when we take this and then turn it into that market-facing material, we might make some changes. Again, I'm not suggesting you lie, but again, we might position things differently. We might describe them differently. We might not include some information. We might highlight additional information, and that's okay. But we need to start with this competitive product analysis to make sure we really truly understand how we fit versus the competition. When you do this competitive product analysis, there are four elements you really need to make sure that you capture. And again, I'm gonna show you examples so you see how this fits together. So we start with the need, and I alluded to this a few minutes ago. We need to understand what our customers need. And when I say customers, I don't mean necessarily just your existing customers. In many cases, we're trying to acquire new customers. So we're looking at buyers, we're looking at users. So we define at SiriusDecisions, we define a need as a desired outcome that has business value for a persona. So the need is not, I want to upload a file. The need is, I want to fill open positions at my company, or I want to make sure that we don't get sued, or I want to make sure that my employees can access information when they're outside of the office, right? What is the outcome that we're looking for? And that outcome needs to provide some sort of business value for a specific persona. The needs are going to be different from persona to persona. So different user personas will have different needs. User personas and buyer personas will have different needs as well. The capabilities, what I mentioned just a minute ago, is that we want to describe in non-technical terms what the product needs to provide or do to allow that need to be addressed. So if the issue is, we want to, the need is we want to, get high quality candidates that we can interview. Well, the capability is, well, we need to make sure that there's capabilities to advertise our job postings, as an example, if we're a recruiting tool. So again, we're not talking about the specific features, we're just talking about the capabilities. Capabilities might equate to like an epic in an agile environment. It might equate to multiple epics in an agile environment, but it's certainly not at that user story level. We need somehow to evaluate, again, on an objective basis, how our product compares to the competition. You'll see a couple examples, right? So this could be high, medium, low. It could be a specific number. It could be, the Harvey ball approach, which is, it's filled in if it's good and it's half filled in if it's not good, and things like that. There's a bunch of different things, but you need to decide how are we going to evaluate it and make sure we're evaluating the competitors consistently and on the same scale. And then lastly, we probably want to provide some commentary, because sometimes just the high, medium, low doesn't really answer the question. If we are going to be using this to make decisions on roadmap, or to have discussions about prioritization, or to talk about getting additional resources to be able to address a competitive gap, sometimes we need to provide some explanation as to how a certain competitor does something, or what a certain thing that we want to build needs to contain in order to close that competitive gap. So I'm going to walk you through an example, and in this example, I'm going to use this hypothetical product. We call it Power Up. So the hypothetical company is Power Up, and their product is Schedule. And let's imagine this is a software application that helps manage schedules. So it can be used in lots of different situations, like a fast food restaurant where you need to schedule employees. But the example here is, let's say I'm the product manager for Power Up Scheduler, and we're trying to make this product better equipped to be used in a hospital environment. And in a hospital, you have nurses, and nurses have lots of different shifts. You need to make sure you always have nurses there. Sometimes nurses want to switch shifts, so we need to make sure that we can support that. So I'm just going to use that as an example. So we have Power Up Scheduler, and we have competitor A and competitor B. So the need comes from customer research. So we've done our customer interviews, we've done observational research, we've done customer advisory board, whatever. We've done all this sort of research. So we know this is not our guess at what the need is. This is based on actual data, actual research, what the personas need. In this case, we'll say the chief nursing officer is the buyer persona we're targeting. That chief nursing officer is the person who makes the purchase decision, and they're ultimately responsible for how the function works. And their need is that they need to make sure that staff can easily access their schedules no matter where they are. So whether you're at the hospital, whether you're at one of the different locations, or whether you're at home, you need to be able to look at your calendar and say, okay, when do I need to be there? And maybe make some changes to it. And if we do that, then nurses are happy. They're less likely to look for other jobs. The chief nursing officer doesn't have to fill positions, et cetera, et cetera. And I don't mean to gloss over that, but I do want to focus on that because we need to, before we talk about, do they have this feature or not, we need to understand what's the goal, what's the need, because the competitors might have 10 times more features than us, but if their features aren't relevant to this need, then it doesn't matter. So it's not about the quantity, it's about the quality and the relevance to the need. So based on this need, we say, well, one of the capabilities that we know it's important is off-network access. If our software only lets you access your calendar while you're at the hospital, that doesn't suit the need well. Now we can start doing some analysis and say, yeah, our product does that, or it's going to do that, so that's great. And so does this competitor, and competitor B kind of doesn't do that great of a job. And why? Well, this is where we can put in some information about, well, the problem is with competitor B, you have to log into their application at least once a week from the physical location. And if you're going on vacation for 2 weeks, you can't check your calendar on that second week because you haven't been to the hospital. All right, this is all just hypothetical examples, but this sort of commentary is really important. So when we then at the next step, when we start getting to how do we position ourselves against competitor B, we know that this is one thing. We can give this information to a sales rep. We can put this in a competitive grid that goes out to the market, right? We understand not just because competitor B might say, oh yeah, we have off-network access, but we know these details because we've gathered them. So we can have a much more informed discussion and again, talk about how our capabilities and components better support the need. So another thing we might say is, well, look, in order to access information when you're not at the hospital, you need to have some mobile capabilities. And again, here's how we compare. So you can see in the first row, it was kind of a green, yellow, red comparison. Here, we're just doing some sort of description. And here's an interesting comment, right? We know that, again, hypothetically, maybe when we're selling to rural hospitals, they want SMS support because some of their nurses don't have smartphones. As amazing as that might be, there are lots of people who don't. So if we understand that, we know that, hey, if we are trying to go after big urban hospitals, we're okay. But if we're trying to go up against competitor A in small rural critical access hospitals, we're going to have some challenges because iPhone support is important, but SMS support's important. We need some way for people to be able to get updates on their schedules without having an app or without having a smartphone. So this is, again, just an example. This is all just made up data, but hopefully you can start to see how this works. And I'll just, kind of build this out, right? So we can say, all right, here's this other need that nurse managers need to manage changes in schedule. So what are the capabilities? Well, we need to be able to see the future calendar. We need to allow users to swap schedules with other nurses, right? So this all should come from the research we've done, and we want to do an objective analysis. So here's a good example, right? We might say that competitor B allows 6 months future calendaring, and someone looking at that might say, oh, if they have 6 months and we have 3 months, then we need to have our calendar extend out in the future. Well, we can put a comment here that says, hey, look, based on our research, we don't think so, right? So there's a certain threshold where beyond which customers don't really care. So this sort of commentary and discussion and comparison can be really helpful to make your decisions about your roadmap, make decisions about how to prioritize features, and have those internal discussions, especially when you have executives, sales reps, partners, other people coming to you and kind of demanding you do things to your product. Well, they might be completely legitimate, appropriate requests, but they also might be things that, they're just looking and saying, oh, you need this feature because this competitor has this feature. And if you haven't done this sort of analysis like this, where you're taking, your products and aligning them to capabilities and aligning them to needs, then you're going to be behind the 8 ball. It's going to be really difficult to kind of justify your decisions, because you're always going to be fighting a battle of, why don't you add this feature? Why don't you add this feature? But when you have an analysis like this, you can say, well, that's a really interesting feature, but let's look at what our customer research says, or let's look at where the other competitors fall, or, what need does this relate to? And maybe it relates to a need, but it's a really, really unimportant need. And we want to focus our roadmap and our resources on the much more important needs. So I've kind of gone through a quick overview of this, but hopefully you start to get the sense for how this works. And again, I promise you something you can take them. You can literally right after this, start doing this if you don't have it already. Just a simple table and spreadsheet, and you can start filling this information. And the one thing I'll just leave you with is, this is an area where we've got some more research on. So I wanted to kind of offer something for people who are able to be on this webcast. What I've shared with you in part comes from a research brief that we have on this content. We've made a copy of this available. So if you're interested in learning more, you can just go to the bit.ly URL. It's just a shortcut URL. So it's CA-4-PM, right? So competitive analysis for product management. So if you go to that URL, you can get a copy of the research brief that kind of provides this example, as well as a lot more detail and some other suggestions that I just didn't have the time to cover today. So I'll end there and see if there's any questions or comments related to this specific element of competitive analysis or anything else in the umbrella of competitive analysis.
Thank you so much, Jeff, for that presentation. That was great. We do have some questions from our Facebook group. While I gather them up here, one question we like to ask all of our speakers is, do you have any advice for aspiring product managers? A piece of wisdom, a quote, anything you'd like to tell someone trying to break into PMing?
Yeah, I've gotten this question a lot over the past 10 plus years. One thing a lot of people say is, how do I get a job as a product manager? And what I like to say is, it's almost always easier to get a job in any role that you haven't ever done before within the company that you're at. So let's flip the situation the other way around. If I'm a VP of product management and I'm hiring for a product manager and I get 100 resumes from people outside the company, all things being equal, I'm probably going to lean towards people who have been product managers before. That being said, most of the people I know who are product managers or product management leaders now, their first product management job was because someone saw them and said, hey, you seem like a smart person. You're in marketing, you're in sales, you're in development, but you seem like you know what you're doing, or hey, we have this opening, and you have that it's familiarity. So I always advise people is, if you're interested, look within your own company first. There's for various reasons. Now, there might be situations where that's not going to work, and that's okay. But I think in many cases, you're more likely to get a job within your current company, whether or not you've gone to any sort of product school training or things like that, just because people are familiar with you, and often there are opportunities that are available to you that you wouldn't have if you were on the outside looking in.
Awesome, thank you. So the next question we have is, when evaluating competitor products through testing, what are good resources to go beyond the surface level feature and learn about how it ties into the value proposition?
So one of the best ways to learn about your competitors is talk to your customers. So your customers might be using your competitors' products, or maybe they previously used your competitors' products, either at their current job or past job. So, customer interviews are a great technique for many reasons, but one of them is because they might give you a lot of good information on the competition. Now, obviously, there's certain ethical things and that you need to be aware of, right? In some cases, maybe they have access to another application, but they can't show you. But in most cases, it's appropriate for them to talk about. They can say, oh, well, I'm, at my last job, we used this other product, and here's what I liked about it, and here's what I didn't like. So when I talk about getting out from behind your desk and actually talking to people, that's one of the reasons we do that, is because your competitors, your customers probably have familiarity with competitor products. I would also say, even if they are happy customers of yours today, they're probably getting marketing and they're probably getting pitched to by your competitors. So they might be able to give you insight on, hey, Jeff, I really like your product, but your competitor said this about you. Is that true? Or they said that their product does X, Y, and Z. I don't believe them. So I think that's one of the oftentimes untapped resources for getting good competitive information beyond that surface level. Do they have this feature or not?
Awesome. You actually just tied in perfectly to our next question, which is, how do you feel about presenting competitors' products to research participants as part of a concept test? Would you like to go a little further in on it?
Yeah, I think it's generally, I think it's a good idea. I think the thing to be careful of is, again, there's the kind of the ethical boundary. So if it's a public website, if it's something that you have access to and you're able to, I think generally that's okay. If it's oh, my cousin works for this company and he got access to this product and I'm going to use it, generally that's not okay. But I've done that in the past too. Again, in certain situations, yeah. So a competitive product usability test or competitive product comparison, kind of from the minds of the customers. I've had customer interviews where the customer is like, hey, let me show you how I do this, right? And they show me actually what they go through, whether they use our product or the competition. So that's, again, I think there's a lot of use in that. And again, ethical, assuming you're staying within what's reasonable and ethical, I think that's a great approach to learning more about the competition and learning more about what your customers think of the competition.
Cool, thank you. And for our last question, how early in the process do you typically define personas and concept test on different audiences?
So we recommend, as part of the innovation and product lifecycle process that we recommend that being one of the first things you do. So in that first phase, you can't build a product and have it ready for launch and then talk about the personas, because you're going to fail. So as you are thinking about, should we build this product at all, you need to be thinking about, who is it for? What's the audience? What are their needs? Who's going to buy it? Who's going to use it? That's also where you start to do some of the competitive analysis. So our general recommendation is that's one of the first and most fundamental things you need to do in order to develop a great product, is to understand who the audience is and start defining and developing those personas.
Awesome, thank you. So I think that about wraps up our webinar here. Thank you for joining us today and sharing your insights.
Absolutely, thanks for having me. It's great to be here and hope everyone got some value out of the presentation.
Cool. So before we leave, I wanted to give our audience some more information on Product School's upcoming courses and events. So they have the resources to become a product manager. Our product management, product leadership, coding, data analytics, UX design, and digital marketing courses are taught by industry experts working at companies like Google and Facebook. In addition to that, we offer weekly online and on-site events at our 16 campuses across the US, UK, and Canada. So if you're located near a campus, make sure you stop by one of our weekly events every Wednesday and Thursday. Also, you can find us on social media at Product School, and be sure to keep up with the latest product management content at the product blog at productschool.com. Thank you all for joining. Enjoy the rest of your day, and I hope to see you next week. Thank you, Jeff. Have a good one.